ミニオンが出撃しました。ファーストブラッド。味方が倒されました。敵を倒しました。
Hello everyone, welcome to Lol Park here in the space. We got a special desk for you, very special day. It is the Try Dan desk. Myself, Daniel Gonzalez, also known as Deacon. It's Daniel Ox Harrison, and of course, the honorable great Daniel Valdez. It is 1-0 T1 versus D plus D.
味方が倒されました。
This is a momentous Try Dan
敵を倒しました。
And it started with an interesting draft that also had a Yumi Zeri picked in game 1 and a Yumi Oops this time, not from career.
Yeah, I feel like T1 got a lot of really good picks for them in the start of the draft, right? They got the Rumble, the Azir, the Zinzao.
敵を倒しまし
It's
た。
just phenomenal for that top side. Then when the bot lane comes through, they got into Ash Therapy, and they opt to go for this Zeri Yumi. And you're gonna be losing out in terms of lane prio, you're gonna get bullied, you have some sustain into it, but it's also kind of a ticking time bomb. We've seen some lanes where you just get blown out and there's never any recourse. This is a situation where you have a lot of power at level 6 with the ultimate from the Zeri. You're running kills, it's going to be built by the Yumi that can mitigate the ult pressure. And it's really on Smash and Korea to crush you in lane. And when we look at the stats, they weren't that ahead in CS at 10 minutes. They did have a kill because Carrier made a mistake, stepped outside, got rooted. And with the plates on that kill, there was a bit of a gold lead, but this is not a huge discrepancy we've seen in other games when we've had the Ashe Seraphine. And when I'm against Zeri Yuumi and they're only this far behind, I'm a little worried.
Yeah, it ended up being a pretty big issue when Paze just flashed over the arrow and just ulted them, and I think that it's a lot of confidence shown from Paze and from Keria, and this is exactly what happened, where they flashed over the arrow. You know, they could have, you know, essentially killed them here, but also Owner came down at the perfect timing. And this is one way to just break out of the Ashe Seraphine lane and just face it in a more aggressive manner.
And that's the thing, that one play completely destroyed that lead that had been built up over those 10 minutes. So, ended up being unfortunate. They went for Paze here because you had no cleanse available, but it just meant Owner had free reign to aggress in the spot lane who didn't have summoners, and it ends up turning around even worse. Double kill goes over to Paze, and not in a good spot from there.
Yeah, and that was without Crescent Guard, right? The Xin Zhao just went straight onto the Ashe, and that was all she wrote. And you're thinking, oh, there it is, D+. They had their opportunity. There's their window. There's no way they could come back, right? Right? Right?
Well, T1 does tend to do this. I think their entire attitude with throughout this game was just, we are better than you, we are ahead, we're going to do whatever we want. And they did a little bit of that here in highlight number 2, where Faker gets caught. This is kind of standard as well. You know, Lucid uses a lot. They take down the Azir. And then T1's like, now we're going to press the go button and just kill you and get revenge.
Yeah, and it just ends up being this really extended chase to get the Jarvan, which, you know, if you end up eventually getting the Jarvan, but it just keeps committing into more and more over the course of this. And I think it's just this mindset, we're super fed, we can do anything, and being a little bit disrespectful on the play, and Pace backing in here into everyone. Doesn't have the cleanse, doesn't have Awaken, have the CC, and this Cassante being up in your face is actually a problem. You don't cut through him that quickly, and he does relevant damage when he has his ult pop. So disrespectful from T1, and this kind of gave a window for D+ to get back in the game and showed, even with that lead, even with that fed Zeri, if you just play with sort of reckless abandon, you will be punished.
Yeah, and it wasn't the first or it wasn't the only time that happened, but it was the first time. And then after that, T1 get Baron. They try to push in the base. They kind of oopsie game there. Then on the bottom side of the map, they're trying to split push. They oopsie game there. So there were opportunities for D+ to come back into it. However, it was still a 5,000 gold lead where D+ think they get a decisive pick yet again onto Faker to start a catch. But he just does those magical things where he lives on 1 HP.
Yeah, I mean, he gets away here, which is kind of insane. You can see basically 1 HP, he gets out, and you're thinking, okay, well, DK, they get a huge win in the fight, essentially, to start off, but you haven't solved the Zeri issue, and our casters talked about it. If Paze is alive, any fight is takeable, or they're going to pull the trigger regardless, and they do exactly that here once again.
I think it's big tools, right? Shockwave is down, the Ashe Arrow is down. You see the Cassante goes in very aggressive and gets chunked out and taken out, and that gives Paze free reign to play aggressive. Like, so many tools are being burned, and Zeri really flourishes in a scenario where those tools are unavailable and you can just sweep in and clean up. And I think D+, you didn't get the Azir, and they felt frustrated by that. They were like, we have a brief numbers advantage before the TP.
Oh boy.
But they just pushed in and held their position way too aggressively, and T1 immediately punished that.
So there's definitely a lot to go over for the side of D+ Kia, but CV Max is livid after that game number 1. And I mean, you know, I think T1 were trying to make a statement with how aggressively they were playing, you know, whether it was happy gaming or whatever you want to call it. But it did feel like DK kind of just got blasted out of the arena in game 1, and as a coach, you're going to feel that emotionally. It's going to feel like you feel very vulnerable after a loss like that.
Yeah, I mean, especially CV Max. He's known to be very passionate and have that dictate how his team plays, especially when you know how good they can be. Like, when you know that they've been able to come back from deficits before, when they've been able to be front runners and dictate to that man in the jungle and Lucid. But when you don't execute a composition that you wanted to run, and Max is saying, like, hey, I know how this composition runs later. T1 has to get an early lead, and you give it to him, you get upset because you're like, hey, we drafted our strategy here, but then you let Paze run all over us like that.
Yeah, and I think even with the mistakes from T1, they haven't been super critical, super clean. They're still a team who knows how to sort of bring a game back together, rein it in when things get a little messy. they're a team who are liable to do some of those shenanigans. We've seen them do it many times before, and I think Pays on these hyper carries, this is really what we saw him on when he debuted. You know, Zeri was such a big part of the meta when he was on that Gen G lineup before.
Yeah, well, again, we know that the stakes are high. A win here means that you continue on into the top 3, over to Hong Kong. A loss here ends your cup run. Let's get into game number 2.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And I was just ruminating on that. Did see that even after the time in the coach's booth where all of the players were there, Korea was there, and CV Max was having a chat to him, just making sure that they can get on the same page. But I think maybe the carrot could be the next thing, you know? Because I feel like CV Max for the last 7 years has been all about the stick. And I think maybe carrot from now on could be a good idea.
I watched the last fight again, and I think you could really feel the frustration because you and I also felt that the draft for T1 was so risky. I think if you believe that you could win this series, which CV Max's coach interview before this best of 5 started out, didn't really give me the utmost confidence.
No.
If you truly believe you can win this series, if you truly believe you can go to Hong Kong and do what BNK already did and defeat T1, you have to trust you could win with that draft against what T1 put together. And I think the win cons were there. The sloppiness for T1 through the beginning of that late game gave them some ins, but they just couldn't do it. And CV Max has got to be frustrated, but maybe he's trying to get them motivated because T+ has been a team that, as you say, many times falls behind. If they lose momentum, they just do not play as well as they did in the previous games. And it's happening early in this series, and that is a demoralizing loss to take.
Yeah.
So the passion of CV Max, I think maybe perhaps warranted, but we'll see if he's said the right things as we move into this Game 2 draft.
Yeah, I think sometimes encouragement is a little bit better than, you know, hammering in your mistakes. But what do I know? I am not a coach. I am just a commentator, and I do make a lot of mistakes myself, and maybe I'm projecting just a little bit, you know.
You don't know what he said. It might have been aggressive encouragement.
Yeah, you might have been aggressively saying, I think you're an incredible player, and you can show so much better than that. He might have been saying that you can show so much better than this, and let's hope that they actually can. As we do have very similar bans this time around, Vyambessa and the Bard Nocturne, but instead it will be the Varus taken away here on the T1 side. And so bringing up a ban here for DK. We'll see what they do decide to take off the board. Probably Pantheon.
I think that's the best option. On this patch. In my mind, it's just such an incredible win rate and so much global impact. And you give that pick to T1, it's like, oh, okay. Well, we'll find out. We'll find out what happens if we give that to T1, won't we?
Yeah, and banning the Anivia is so odd because I feel like they are then going for the Rise pickup, right? But I think Faker's pretty good at Cassiopeia, like if they want to play something like that instead.
You know, CV Max might be familiar with the strength of Pantheon Talia as a strong duo.
He might also be familiar with its weaknesses, but perhaps
maybe in a different lane,
in the bottom lane. Yeah, the most obvious Pantheon first pick ever comes in. Let's see whether they do decide to head towards the Rise, or whether it's going to be something else. Yeah, of course it is.
Well, I mean, this is kind of the way that we do Fearless here in the LCK. You go Orianna, Azir for game 1. You go Rise game 2. It's often Rise Talia. Doesn't have to be, but with the Pantheon already here, it's a pretty good chance. And now what does Lucid play in the jungle here? The Jarvan is gone, obviously.
Unless they decide instead to just slam Yanara. Because they could do that, take that away from Pays, and then give Smash the ability to carry. But instead, we have some monkey business. Oh no, not the hover regular jungler, and then just switch to Lee Sin. I'm getting some flashbacks, Wolf. It is smile though. I like the smile.
The smile, I don't know if I like it. It makes me,
even if they like just bow out 0-3 Wolf, if they do so with a smile on their faces, I will be a happy man.
You might be.
I'm not that happy.
I might be a little bit less happy. I think maybe D+ fans a little bit extremely less happy, as we're going to see a Jace to come through here pretty early on.
Call.
And that is certainly a potential flex pick here. Now, the Pantheon is almost certainly going in the jungle because it is able to be omnipresent that way and impacts the lanes incredibly powerfully. But we could see a weird flex where the Pantheon goes to support. The Jace could be then flexible. I think it's probably Jace top and probably the Pantheon in the jungle, but that will make clear with the Talia being locked in here, so no surprises here. T1's top side is completely locked up, but what do you want to play? Yeah, what do you want to play into the Jace on the top side? You just want to grab a tank and absorb that pressure, make the Rise a little bit more powerful later, but be willing to give away that prio into the Jace. That's the tough call you have to make. It makes playing Gwen feel horrible in this draft, and it looks like he's just going to drop that tank down. But now the Yunara, you mentioned, is 100% going to get banned here. T1 are not going to play into that. They're not going to allow Smash to have that win con with the front line they already have. Be double threat here with the Rise Yunara DPS.
Yeah, I think the Scion actually does make a fair bit of sense with the fact that you can avoid ganks quite effectively with your ultimate. You're not as worried about being CC'd because, of course, you're unstoppable for the majority of the time. They will need to find a lot of damage, though. So we require Smash to be playing a hyper carry. Like, if I see a Jhin in this game, I may leave the desk. Thankfully, we have another play-by-play in the house, but I don't know whether I could convince Valdez to come and commentate this game if it is going to be Scion Jhin, which just makes me feel terrible.
If T1 had a little bit more of a strong, like, in terms of health pool and like sticky top laner, they could play the Jhin themselves, I think, in this draft to a decent degree, but I think Jhin is probably not really going to be on the cards in this one. Taking away the Lulu does feel very smart. It's going to really eliminate a lot of the range threats here that Haze and Keria will be landing into. They know that Smash is looking for the more carry-oriented play or pick.
Yeah.
You could look for the Ezreal here because it's very safe inherently as Smash, and Smash is very good at the pick, but you know, it's a bit of a nod, but
I thought it was going to be a Poppy bet. I feel like Poppy would have been a really good option. We saw Lucid have an incredibly difficult time into the Poppy, I believe, in game number 3 of their previous series. It was why the Lee Sin didn't quite work out. And then he'd have to contend with both the Unraveled Earth and the Steadfast Presence, which would be very, very worrisome.
There's still a strong potential, like even Lucian angle here for T1, depending on how they want to take this draft, because it has a lot of pick with Pantheon and Talia. Leona is taken away, another strong pick for Ezreal, and set up there. And honestly, one of Career's best picks, in my mind, is taken away now. So what does Smash want to do? Does he want to just go for the blind Yunara and see if they could fight their way through this? Get the scaling from late game. He wants to play the safer Ezreal. Does he want to play Aphelios? Aphelios without Lulu is pretty tricky here. They could try to go for the Thresh angle, but I think it just feels like in this situation, we've seen it time and time again, Smash just drops the Ezreal. And he has an individual performance that is insane, but it's sometimes his team cannot back it up elsewhere on the map. And Ezreal is not, to me, the pick that you can get it done alone with a lot of the time.
Yeah, I also feel like this composition is pretty all-in, and so if you have started a scrap, I don't think you get that time to sort of just dance around the neutral that the Ezreal does really love to do. As Pays taking a leaf out of the Guma book here, considering the Caitlyn.
Yeah, looking like it.
As Yunara Karma. Yunara Karma. So it's got a massive amount of engage, but it doesn't actually really matter because they outrange this so far. Not necessarily on the bottom side of the map. The Ezreal will be able to take pot shots and things like that, but the Jace should be able to threaten with these shot blasts.
What is the engage to kill this Yunara?
Like, well, Korea might be showing us. The problem is, if you do choose an engage support, this lane is not going to be fun. And instead, all right, this is a way to do it. Just go for a bit of an all-in.
So this is, to me, almost, it's like the theme, the concept of this draft is not as hard to play out for the bottom 2v2 this time for Pays and Keria, because this time they have the Karma on their side. But the way this game is going to play out for Pays almost is exactly the same as the Zeri game did in game 1, where it's like, okay, can you kill this guy? He's going to do massive amounts of damage. He's going to cut through your front line. You have so much pick setup here for him. He has a Karma to get shields. Lane Prio is going to be yours on the top side. You have bottom side Prio with the Yunara Karma. That's always going to have push. Unless some crazy hooks come through from Career, we see that turn around. And then the Rise into the Talia. The Talia has not really, so far in the LCK Cup, been the winning one on that side. And yes, the Rise for Showmaker will out-damage the Talia in team fights, so it's not just the Ezreal doing the damage. But if this Yunara comes online, gets online early, T1, they could just do whatever they want, but this time they have engaged. This time they have tools to kill the Rise, and then the Ezreal can't get it done on its own. And the fact that they have lane prio in both top and bottom side here, I think is one of the biggest issues for Lucid, who's going to struggle to make an impact on this Lee Sin. Even though Lee Sin has a lot of agency in the early levels, with no lanes to play through, it's going to be tricky.
And he also, he was on a Jarvan in the last game, right? And you have a lot of tools to get stuff done early. He got nothing done early. So we're going to have to see Lucid really make a turnaround here in game number 2. D+, we want to even out the series. Let's get into it. All right, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, under the rift for the second game of the series. D+ wanting to see whether they can get back on the horse once again. Showmaker on his rise. I feel like once again gonna have a decent time in the lane. You already mentioned we have the Korea versus Rise matchup right here. You can see things working out relatively evenly in level 1, but it should be that Showmaker can pretty comfortably build up to his first couple of items and do a lot more damage than what Faker will be able to do on this Taliyah. He goes for the same relatively anemic build that we've seen times with the Rylai's second. Hook on to connect, as Keria will just not really mind because it's level 1 and hits the Mantra Q.
Yeah, I'm just going to continue to harass here. As long as you don't cooked under turret area.
Yeah.
He's really standing close to... Yep, standing close to a hook.
Oh, and there it is! Not going to quite have level 2 just yet, so Pei's not going to get knocked up, but that could have been worse.
Yeah.
Invested the Ghost.
I don't think it matters too much in this lane because you're like, okay, cool, now your hook's on cooldown and we're still Karma, you know, pushing into you, but it didn't need to happen that way.
No. And they do at least punish Korea with a metric Q there.
Like there is almost no champion. Like obviously Ashe Seraphine trumps all, but there's almost no champion in the game that warps lane like Karma does, where it's like, yeah, my AD carry did get hooked by Blitzcrank under turret and take a turret shot, and it means nothing. We're still winning, by the way. This wave is crashing through, and we're gonna. He just looks back and he's like, all right, I will metric Q again.
Oh, we had the little zoom. Jonah Strong was thinking that Korea might be going for it, decides not to. We do have a Lee Sin in the area, as D+ will be considering a little bit of a recall, but doesn't actually come on through as Doran and Q fighting against one another. I feel like no matter how the meta changes, we will always just have the odd Sion Jace game.
Yeah, that's just how it goes. Chronicle always wished for a little bit more Malphite in the Jace, but
yeah,
we never actually had the odd Malphite in the Jace.
At least it's unstoppable something as his ultimate, you know?
Yeah.
There's that.
Well, the Jace is going to win the matchup unless errors are made by Doran, and sometimes it can be a fun matchup. If the Jace wants to play hyper-aggressive and, you know, the Sion gets some trades back once he has a few more levels in him.
Oh. Lucid does discover Ona. Yeah, he just does come on through there, but Showmaker making his way over here as well. Has to deal with the rocks as at least the seismic shove does not quite connect. Vision everywhere though, so Korea not going to be able to find these cute little hooks from the fog of war.
Yeah, actually ends up being pretty good control here by D+. Grab that scuttle.
Not going to quite find the Essence Flux angle.
Hayes does not have barrier, so making big outplays on his own is going to be pretty tricky here when he's alone. With the Karma there, he kind of permanently has barrier, feels like, obviously. And Doran is just going to say, all right, thanks for your TP and fourth your health bar.
Yep. He had just made his way back to lane as well, and so it's not exactly as bad as it could have been there for Shiu, but still doesn't feel fantastic as Lucid makes his way towards the top side for his Grom. That does have vision on it. So T1 know exactly what's going on. Good angle there as Faker throws the big old rock at Showmaker. Nothing else going to really come of it, as Showmaker does have a slight advantage. And Korea is moving up the mid lane. Poke his head in, see what Showmaker's up to as Smash will be able to collect this wave. It's not going to be end of the world. Should be able to even out things as far as CS is across the board on that bottom side.
Yeah, nothing crazy. The agency that T1 have early here hasn't, you know, led to a massive lead. Speaking of agency.
Yeah, there's the knock-up onto Faker. Showmaker in a little bit of trouble, gets the heal as the flash comes out. Korea had already thrown the hook though. Still gets the flash that he was looking for.
Now
That's the heal.
they know there's no blitzcrank in the bottom lane, so FaZe can just continue to push
敵を
this
倒し
in
ま
and
した
grab the plate. So it's not all for nothing here for T1 with that flash being expended for Faker. They do get the cross map on the bottom side. Small one.
Yep.
Just want to be sure.
Bit of extra money certainly feels good. As now Doran dives on top of Shu.
He is a Korean Jace player.
Yeah.
He is one of the ones that we have here in the LCK.
And actually Smash is taking teleport. Interesting one, as the flash hook not going to quite connect there.
You know that you're never really going to have the trade pattern to actually look for a barrier play into this composition, and cleanse feels relatively low value. Really, you're only cleansing a Pantheon or maybe like a root from Keria on the leash. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to go for TP, especially on the losing lane as Faker.
Yeah, is going to try and shove back Lucid, who gets himself out of there. The Q is going to miss though, and so Faker will survive. No flash, remember, that's why Lucid decided to go for it. Waited for the rocks to be on cooldown as well, so that he could actually get in. As now Ona, going to quite find the angle there, but will have a very deadly spear being lined up pretty soon.
We haven't seen FaZe complete his first back yet. He's going to go ahead and take that now.
味方が倒されました
Has Red Reeves on first back.
敵を倒しました
Grabs the extra longsword there, so
敵を倒しました
inventory. The lead that Showmaker has picked up here hasn't really amounted to too much just yet, but he grabs a plate now and is starting to build up a small CS advantage.
Yep.
And Doran, obviously on the top side, has a greater lead, but doesn't necessarily mean as much, well, not as much as like a small lead here for Showmaker. I don't want to compare the two of them. What I mean is, this lead isn't a huge one as Keria.
Yeah, is going to be face tanking here, and down he will go. Lucid able to pick up first blood. True Shot Barrage helping out.
There was a ward in the river.
Sometimes walk the tri-brush, and you make it most of the way via a hook, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a big win.
It is.
Hill goes over to Lucid in the bottom lane. And that lead is more significant. Really what I was getting at is that the Scion is going to be okay to be down on gold in this matchup. They opted into that. They knew that was going to be the case. His job is to just be a health bar later on. This is a more significant advantage picked up as this Lee Sin starting to get off the ground.
Oh, let's see. Korea does not throw the hook. So remember, you miss every hook you don't take. So technically, he just missed it.
Sure.
As Keria, let's get a ward on over. Let's cancel Korea's back there momentarily. Smash off to the side, got hand. Not quite activated. Seismic shove also not going to quite connect here. So everyone is safe for the moment. Prison comes on through, but Showmaker still taking a fair bit of damage back as the threaded volley is starting to hurt. We'll have to see what Faker's build is going to be. It looks like it is going to be a Seraph's, but we have seen other Talias go for second item. Leandri's, for example, with the Scion on the enemy team could be a decent option.
Definitely going to be one of the options for him here. The thing I'm looking at in this game so far here for T1 is, we haven't seen as much of an impact from Owner in this game. Hasn't used his ultimate just yet. And it doesn't look like he's going to be using it here to affect this bottom lane. He also doesn't have insanely strong side lane champions to play through. Oftentimes with this Pantheon, you end up having a Azir to play through, for example, or a really strong pushing. Sometimes if you have like Pantheon Ryze, the Ryze has a great wave clear, it can be a huge threat in sides. He has a Jace, which can do a lot if left alone, but it's also a Talia with Ghost, so I think he needs to do a little bit more early here. He does have a nice angle right now. He's unseen behind the enemy lines.
Yeah, the problem as well is that it's Keria here on the Karma, so not going to be backing up with too much extra as now. Owner and Faker do find Showmaker, but he does move himself out of the way. You going to connect there onto Owner as the kick. Let's see whether it does actually come on down. Exhaust comes through, but he then misses the hook. Unfortunate there for Korea. So that is going to be the end of that. Okay, now an all-in angle for Paze, a level down. Smash, not quite finding it here. As Mystic Shot's difficult to land when Paze is running extraordinarily quickly. Goes to Nulti, going to be helping him out there. The flash forward from Showmaker, though, that actually catches Jonas Strong off guard, and that's another kill for Lucid. This time the hook is going to connect, but there was no one else there. And so Owner is going to turn that into an engage for himself, but only has Keria backing him up. And so DK just 2-0 with not much of a response.
Yeah, Paze doesn't actually follow on the all-in there on the bottom side, even though it felt like he had a pretty decent angle to continue trying to push Smash out. So Smash actually gets almost everything here and still remains up on farm. Azuk is even going to take some of the jungle away here from Owner.
The teleport, I believe, just spotted him as he teleported over the top of the camp. That was a cute one, but he is now going to be going back home. Owner should be able to take the straight, though.
They get the dragon here, but this is just
味
T1
方が倒されました。
actively in the early game, punishing T1 quite heavily.
And Lucid is the one that's the
Taking
benefactor.
the
You're
double kill.
asking him, like, Lucid, can you be more proactive? Well, he's 2-0 in this game. There are only 2 kills so far, so that is certainly looking good. Obviously, this was
敵の
largely on the back of
killing
Showmaker with a great flash.
Yeah, Showmaker gets the flash route, and now there's just no real play here for T1 on the follow. This Faker didn't have flash, has it now, but the Lee Sin here, we said he didn't really have lanes to play through, but he found opportunities. The shield, I don't know if this is an opportunity.
Well, he gets a flash kind of as a freebie, and so you'll take those.
And Lucid is on the top side of the map. I don't know if they
味方の
make something
タワー
of
が
this.
破
Might
壊
be
され
able
ました。
to.
Oh dear, Lucid. Going to be able to at least stop him from backing out of the way, but we know that there's no one coming. There's no teleport on this team, nothing at all, and so that is just going to be an easy one picked up here by the DK jungler. Made that 3-0 here for the Lee Sin.
Well, D+ are really off to the races in this one, and T1 are really going to struggle to find their way back in. I mean, consider that Jace does not have TP, now is going to find himself, even in CS, the Sion takes a lead, and the plays are given over, and this Talia is going to take a long time before she can really start setting up plays, and Owner has felt invisible in this game, just behind the plays here from Lucid. Find himself 1,000 behind.
Oh, another hook, going to go wide here. Spaze doesn't have his Ghost back available just yet, but also hasn't had to use his flash at all this game. So feeling pretty comfortable on this Yunara. A looming threat, you could say, as that Realm Walk was optimistic at best. Showmaker will be going down as T1 pick up their first kill of the game. That's a fast range shot, very nicely done there, as Carrier's burning down. Takes the Blitzcrank for a walk, though, and he will get snared. And Korea looking a little worse for wear, but otherwise is going to be all right.
Victory!
He's just able to offer so much damage back.
Crazy amount of damage, and because